so we call for the next presentation, case study Çatalhöyük in Turkey by Arek Marciniak of the Mickiewicz University. Please, Arek.
Thank you, Kai. And cannot agree more with the discussion that it's each case is different, and Çatalhöyük is a completely different case, and Turkey is a completely different country than the one that we discussed so far. And obviously Çatalhöyük in particular, the site is well known. I mean, it has been excavated in 2 different campaigns, and it's in major archaeological textbooks and does not require any kind of recommendations. But yet, that offers a different circumstances in which we work, and also the way in which the project is to be carried out. And I would like to sort of discuss today a little bit of what has been achieved so far in the project, and a history of the community involvement project at Çatalhöyük, because the NEARCH project by no means is the first one. So we have to somehow rely upon our predecessors and experience, learn from the previous projects. And also I'd like to, I think, inevitably discuss a little bit the situation in Turkey today in relation to archaeology and archaeological heritage that define the way in which the project operates and in the way in which we work, which I think has a far-reaching consequences. So it's completely different than the case in Palestine that we've just heard. But I believe, as a matter of general point, that for the further discussion, that I think we should somehow be able to, at the end of the theme, discuss it at a better level. You know, that each case is different, and that actually approach has to be very case sensitive, and we have to be aware of the differences. So I very much like the way in which Paul presented before breakfast. You know, the very diverse approach, a number of, especially your last slide, a different sort of method that you used that are sort of applicable to different cases to different extent. Okay, and you have to play around with all of them at the very same time. Okay, so Çatalhöyük, obviously, as I said, it is a site that is dated to the 7th millennium Cal BC, and it continues until the middle of the 6th millennium, has been on the World Heritage List since 2012, after a long campaign that was very much supported by the Turkish government. They were very much involved in the application, and they're very much engaged in the whole process. So the site was just for those who maybe don't know the history, was found in 1958 by James Mellard during one of the surveys in Central Anatolia, and then excavated in the years 61 and 65 by James Mellard, and it is currently under excavation and all kind of work in the Çatalhöyük research project directed by Ian Hodder, that leads a number of international teams. So the current project, and I'm going to sort of discuss this within this sort of the frame of the project, because it is the conditions or context in which we operate. It is 1993, the permit was issued, and it was the first season, and 1995 started excavation for the first time, and the project will continue until 2018, because the permit was for 25 years. And it doesn't mean that it's going to be finished. Okay, there will be continued to some extent. We don't know in which form. It's going to be decided by the Turkish government next year. There are different proposals being suggested to the government, and how it's going to be decided, it's at this point not up to us. Okay, we've been asked to give them some recommendation and ideas how it should be conducted in the future, but how it's going to be decided, we don't know. But anyway, for the time being, we are just operating within this framework. There's a number of sort of archaeological themes, if you like, research-based questions that are probably of less interest, particularly the art and imagery that is well known of, and the social developments, and recently religion and rituals of different formats, and some other issues of interest. It's a big team of scholars. And I think from the day one, particularly, I think thanks to interest of Ian Hodder back in the 90s, that the public side of the project was very much part of the agenda. It was not designed to be just research based, just answer some questions in relation to the Neolithic of the Near Eastern Europe and the kind of a global significance, but it was aimed at understanding the way in which archaeology works. So what would later have been called archaeological process, engagement of different constituencies, different stakeholders, and last but not least, local communities. So from the very beginning, local communities were very much part of the project. So the social relevance of the site, sustainability, has been discussed at least since the 2000s. Because maybe this term has not been used in the 90s to the extent that we use it now. Became very fashionable now. But obviously, if you want to define what the project has been doing in the 90s, very much, this term sustainability covered that. So anyway, that's a very broad context, because the majority of excavation, at least in the Near East in the 90s, were very much scientifically oriented. They aimed to answer some kind of questions in relation to Bronze Age or Iron Age or the Neolithic. So this project was different. And it was also different thanks to the history of the project, because back in the 60s, when James Mallard came to the site, he had a good experience working in Turkey, and he decided to live in the village nearby, and he has been living there for 5 years. And since his wife was Turkish, she's known to get engaged in the local community to a large extent. So they're being remembered even now by the old generations. The Mallards, they're part of the local community. So they were not these strangers, the foreigners coming from elsewhere, just parachuting, spending like a couple of weeks and then departing. No, they created some kind of bonds and relations within the community. So this is being remembered. And I was at Hajila this summer, and again, Mallard is remembered, and his work at Hajila, that was back in the 50s, still are people around that remember him being at this site. So that's, again, has to be taken into consideration. And then it's a number of stakeholders, as you see, it's a long list, because it's a politically very important site, scientifically, artistically, etc. So a number of people keep coming to the site and trying to get engaged. We have the artists within the project that work with us, a number of other domains that I'm not going to talk today, but it is a very diverse community of stakeholders that are being sort of brought in to the site, and inevitably we as archaeologists being at the site, we have to work with them, because we just stay there and they only come when there is the window of the project that we actually excavate. Okay, otherwise they can come as tourists and they cannot do anything else because the site is basically closed. So, and the projects, encourage and keep encouraging all these different stakeholders to come and get integrated with us. That actually create a very unique situation, because we have to do our archaeological work, but at the same time we're somehow responsible for these different people coming and staying and working with us. But there is also this community part, very much important in the project. And I would say we should be considered at 4 different levels as far as Turkey is concerned for Çatal. So the local community is by no means homogeneous, okay? And they have a contradictory interest, okay? And there is an ongoing debate, struggle, or even conflict within this local communities, or not to say community. Because Turkey is a very, very hierarchical country, and those at the very bottom of the social ladder have no say whatsoever. And this is, the Çatalhöyük is an exemplary case of this situation. So what are the communities? So we have Çatalhöyük, which is in the middle of nowhere, okay? It is on the Konya plain, far away from the biggest cities. You have Konya, the provincial capital, okay? Where there's more than 1 million inhabitants, a big center, a really big city, where it's 60-70 kilometers away. It's a very bad road. It takes at least an hour to get there, one way, okay, far away. And then you have a village of Küçükköy, where there's a small community of 700 people, more or less. and the town of Chumra, where is a regional, sub-regional capital, 30,000 inhabitants, and there's three different sort of communities. Plus, you have the federal government from Ankara that has a say, and I'm going to tell you about what I can actually do. Okay, so this is actually the situation that we have, and you have to remember that we are talking about Central Anatolia, which is very traditional and conservative. Very traditional and conservative in comparison not only with Ankara and Istanbul, obviously, which is very liberal and sort of pro-European. These are not. And for example, the current Prime Minister, Ahmet Davutoglu, is coming from the region, and they're very proud of that. You know, he's one of the leaders of today's Turkey. He comes and visits Chumra and Konya regularly. And on top of that some previous results show this is a very anti-intellectual attitude of these people. Okay, they do not appreciate what we are doing. They do not appreciate what the European culture is trying to get to intellectually engage some kind of relation with something like that. They are just explicitly against that. And I think this is because of very strong traditions that I think getting back to the 13th century. And especially in Konya, where they have a lot of the madrasas and the religious school that bring children from all over the place. That is the place to get a proper education. Okay? And that any kind of engagement with the foreigners is not welcome. So the proof of that is that all community-based projects, not only Çatalhöyük, in this area got stopped by the Turkish government in 2014. So I'll get back to that in a minute. Okay. So basically, explicitly saying that we do not want foreigners to get engaged with the local community because it is bad for the local community, and it's as explicit as such. Okay, they don't have problem with that. Okay, you can write it down, a justification for the rejection. So for our project, two community-based projects got cancelled this summer, and people who actually were in charge were not they were allowed to come because they were on the permit, but they were not allowed to carry out their projects. Even so, they are Turkish speakers. So it's not like that you have to have a translator. We have a number of people, Americans and Brits and others, who speak the language, okay, and then can get engaged with the local community without any interpreter. But yet, they were stopped. So it is the project, and obviously it is one of the things that we've done over the past couple of months. We basically sum it up, and we collected all raw data that this project actually produced. And I can go on and on and on and talk about some results, but I would like to point out on this project, because this was the most visible. Sonja Atalay, who is a professor of archaeology from University of Massachusetts. She's a Native American and is well known as a community archaeologist. She published a number of textbooks, and she's fluent in Turkish, and she has been coming to Çatal for many years. And she actually had a very similar questionnaire that you produced and used in Tel Balata that we can actually go and rely upon. Some part of it is very, very important. And then she was not allowed to continue the project. Okay. And there's another project with David Shackland from UK. I don't know where he is now. He's in Bristol. Very, very good project at the very beginning. Eifelberg too. And recently, there's a small pilot by Alison Mikkel, who was a PhD student from Stanford, who is very interesting project to actually do with oral history of archaeological excavation in Çatalhöyük from the beginning of the 60s onwards. Okay, the way in which the project has an impact on that. And I will get back to some some final result at the end of it. And we have been sort of trying to collect all sort of data possible, okay? And as you know, Çatalhöyük got on the heritage list in 2012, and we know that there was a significant increase of number of visitors ever since. So I think 2014 and 2015, which are working on the data, there was around 25,000 people, okay, visiting Çatalhöyük. Of course, it is not a lot. If you compare with Ephesus, or if you compare with, I don't know, Troya, that's nothing, okay? And the site that you have in Greece or Italy, that's nothing. But you have to remember that this is really the middle of nowhere. To the coast, it is 4 hours by car, okay? So someone who having a holiday on the coast is not going to come to Çatal, because it's impossible to go and get back the same day. But the Turkish government, the tourism is very important. What is going now, especially between Russia and Turkey, so one of the major concerns for Turkey is tourism. Because there's so many Russians coming, you know, for holiday to Russia. And archaeology is very much explicitly advertised in all these programs. So what the Turkish government wanted to do and wants to do is to get Çatalhöyük integrated with the tourist industry in two ways. First, the Konya itself it's Iconium, it's a Roman city with a nice Roman ruins, not very spectacular. You can go to Ankara, have much nicer, you know, the ruins and remains of the Roman city, but yet exist. But importantly, Konya is a center of Sufism. It's a Mevlana temple, which is both a tourist destination and a pilgrimage place. So the number of Muslims from Turkey, and I think from all over the place, from the Arab countries, come and visit the site. They estimate that more than 1 million tourist pilgrims, difficult to say, you know, who is a tourist and who is a pilgrim, come and visit the site. So as I said, Çatal is an hour away, but there is an encourage them to come and see the site. And the other sort of context in which Çatalhöyük operates is Cappadocia. Cappadocia, a beautiful, picturesque area around 150-180 kilometers away from Çatalhöyük, and it is on the way from the coast, Konya, and then Cappadocia, and you can get back to Ankara easily. And it is where tourists go, because there's a lot of sort of natural beauty, there's a lot of cultural, especially Byzantine churches, etc. You know, underground cities. The Mickiewicz, for example, it's a well-known tourist destinations. So the Turkish government wanted to get Çatalhöyük integrated in this broader touristic development in the country. So one of the means of achieving the goal was to develop archaeological museums. And this was the current government of Erdogan that 5 or 6 years ago set up a program creating a monumental archaeological museums across the country. So right now Hatay was opened this year, and interesting, you have a beautiful Hatay museum, and then you have the refugees camp just a couple of kilometers away. I saw some photos, incredible. It is near Antioquia. And then Urfa, Sani Urfa, was opened earlier this year, Göbekli Tepe. And then Konya. And when we started talking about, Çatal, to be on a heritage list, there was discussion of where the museum is going to happen. We are talking about communal engagement. There were 3 contradictory opinions. Küçükköy, supported by international community, if you like, archaeologists and the others. They should be there. It should be in situ. There's a lot of open space. There's no problem to build anything you want. And it should be next to the site. You can see multimedia, fancy stuff, and then the site itself. But again, it is far away. But that was blocked first by Chumra municipality. They said, no, no, no. Has to be in Chumra, which is a poor city, town, 30,000 people. Let's go build some hotels and improve the infrastructure. But when the decree of Erdogan came, there was no discussion whatsoever. This is going to be in Konya. And this is going to be in Konya. And it has been decided. So entire floor of this new museum, which is like a whirling dervish kind of design, beautiful design. The museums are really beautiful. Will be devoted to Çatalhöyük, 70 kilometers away from the site. So that put up, the community involvement in a very difficult and problematic context, because for Konya inhabitants, they don't basically care. They have Mevlana, okay, and Mevlana is what defines, culturally, what defines them, and the Roman city, Konya. Okay, they know about Çatalhöyük. 90% of people from Konya know about Çatalhöyük, but very few of them actually visited the site. It is far away. It is not monumental. It is coming from the remote past. Okay, it is on a heritage list, but they do not recognize its significance. It is more the locals that actually respect it, because it is how the site is defined their life. So, and then we did this. This is from 10 years ago. Interestingly, I don't have any kind of systematic data of that kind, but as you see, a majority 10 years ago were coming from abroad. A few from Konya, Chumra, generally from Central Anatolia. So I would say this is like more or less Turkish. And now it is different. It is 70-80% locals and 25-30% foreigners, in particular Europeans, the Germans, Brits, French, sometimes Australians coming as well, Americans, they come. But if they come, they know what they want to see. Okay, and these are people. There's not necessarily archaeologists or historians, but some educated people who simply want to see this site if they happen to be in Turkey. And Turkey is a popular destination, with good logistics, in a good infrastructure. So it's a place actually to go and explore. Okay, and some examples. I'm just a couple of slides. What we have been doing with the locals. As I said, it is a continuous project. So we just paste the one we have been talking about: economy, employment, etc. That's by definition, we just employ the locals from the village, from Küçükköy, and maybe another village which is like 10 kilometers away. Okay, and a number of those has been working in the project for many years, and they also work as guards throughout the year. And the site is fenced, and it's being paid by the Ministry of Culture. Okay, we pay them during the season, but in between the season, this is paid by the government. And there's like shops, you can get some souvenirs, Mother's Goddess in a clay or something like that, and you can get a Coca-Cola, and then I don't know what else, all sort of stuff that you can get at any archaeological site. But this is in the hands of local people. And also we have sort of integrated them in understanding of how the site works, because we have now the third, the management plan, which is sort of an ongoing, and the final version will be produced sort of to direct whoever's going to be in charge after the end of this project. And for example, the mud brick architecture, okay, this kind of thing, and it's their voice is visible in the management plan. I can find you where the voice of the local community was integrated into the management plan, which is very much sort of archaeological and heritage based. And an interesting, I think very successful project is on children, that was initiated by one of this project that I showed. This is more than 600 children from the Konya province come in the summer and get engaged in archaeology and archaeologists. They excavate the spoil heap that Mellard left. They do some artistic things, and then come and talk to the lab people, you know, how archaeology works. And it actually is a very, very successful, I think, project. So they come and visit us, you know, basically every day during the season. There's a group of 25, 30 children comes and get integrated with that. Some artistic activities are being done. And this is what Sonja did. So this is, for those who don't know Sonja, this is Sonja Atalay, and this is 2006, 2014. And this is what Sonja did. Wonderful, you know, stories about archaeology and stuff. And then we also organized the community festivals. They're very much welcomed by the local community, especially Kuchukoi. They come and see how archaeology works. You know, they get engaged with us, ask questions, and there's always a feast at the end and the dancing and etc. That happens every year. You know, they just listen to what we are doing, and they're particularly interested in the lab work. You know, all this fancy equipment and Westerners, Europeans and Americans bring and do something with the remains. And some school children are got engaged, etc. This is Alison, that is in talking to the locals. Again, she speaks Turkish. It's very helpful. Talk to the locals about a history, oral history of the excavations. This is a very interesting project. How to remember archaeology and archaeologists, both in the past and now. And the project began in 1993. Okay, so the people who were born in 1993 are now what? You know, in their 20s. Okay, they're just, you know, adults, and they. So this is like a long history of this engagement. So there's something to talk about. Okay, and it's just you know, the last slide. So we have a growing number of visitors. Just to sum it up, and clearly there was an increased number of visitors since Çatal got on the heritage list. There was really a boom. There was the Minister of Culture coming, and then he said, no ambassador is allowed to come with me. It was just Turkish exclusively event. The German ambassador wanted to come, American ambassador wanted to come, and they said, no way. This is Turkish only event. And what happened? Showed up. And there was really in the media everywhere. Very important thing. And now I think Fritz knows more than me what about the Göbekli Tepe, what is going to happen, is it? Anyway, so that's a number of sites, you know, that they're very much concerned about that. And when it comes to the local, I think this is a very interesting point. They said the site is, they say we know very little about what archaeologists are doing, local people, but they say we are very proud of Çatalhöyük, the local, you know, because it's very important for Turkey. They never say it's important for us, it's important for Çumra, no, it's important for Turkey. It is important for our national pride. They're very much, they feel very much part of the grand narrative. Okay, it is like their own narrative. Okay, they do really accept what the government says about it, and the government is very, very much positive. But I said archaeology has a very good, I think, position in Turkey at the very general level. Except for all these problems, but yet they say we know very little. We do not understand what you are doing. You know, that's a result of the survey, and I kind of disappointment because we have been trying to talk to them and I don't know, get engaged with them, and there was a lot of support in the Kuchukoi and in the school and the libraries and blah blah. But yet they say they don't know what you are doing. But it is mostly, I think, because this anti-intellectual attitude, which has nothing to do with archaeology, but the way in which they see the world. And archaeology, by definition, is a very intellectual undertaking. We can dispute, you know, about this or that, agree or disagree, but it doesn't matter. You know, for them, it's really not the discourse that they get engaged in the world. Okay, and I think this is the major problem that I see. How actually we can, if you want to improve, you know, so they can be beneficiary of the project. But yet, Çatal is very much part of the local ethnography or folklore, if you like. It's always was and still is. They say even now, don't go to the Mount on Friday. Hounds. Okay? And it is where we have parties now. A coincidence, we don't work on Fridays. Friday is a day off. For the local community, the workers do not come, they do not work, and have these parties. I don't know how this is seen, okay? Friday, okay, and all the Westerners, drinking beer, which is by no means accepted by them. But yet it is far away, but they know what I think is going on. And yes, past as a very pragmatic value for them. That's how they feel it's a part of the landscape. But Çatal, the Konya, there's the one sentence. Konya Plain is like flat, very boring, and Çatal is like a monumental mount. And you have a village, and there is nothing around the village. So inevitably, it has to be the part of the local stories, And there were burials, recent ones. Always there was a big burial ground in the later Byzantine period and early Islamic period. But yet, the ground of those who are excluded from the community are on the mount. Though who died in the 60s and in the 50s, but still you've got burials on top of the mount. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have some questions?
We will be there next year.
Yes. Come.
Some comments, questions, maybe one or two. Antonella?
Well, it's not actually a question because I just want to say that really I'm astonished about this project, positive astonished. I mean, it's fantastic the way you approached, a bottom-up approach instead of applying a experience model, but there is no model that, works in any context. So you worked inside that specific context, is very difficult also for political, social, anthropological and cultural point of view. And you find out in such a strong involvement of people, local people, legal, and integrating them, it's a really effective result. Very compliment about it. I don't know, and congratulations, and I will follow. I will be very proud to follow your results there.
Yeah, thank you. I agree that it had to be bottom up, and we have been doing what Paul has been doing, the ethnography. We go to the shop, the Kuchuko, the only shop, and this is what you can learn, what is going on, what people think, and the government may say, okay, don't talk to the locals, but you go to the shop and you buy something, and you spend like half an hour talking to the locals, okay? There's only shop. There is a mosque and a shop and a gas station, okay, in the village. That's it. The very central part of the village. And as you can learn a lot, yeah.
I wanted to ask.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, about the engagement of students of young. Because first of all, I would like to ask how did you start this program, this summer program with kids, and then what's the difference of the approach? Because you said you perceived a clear rejection from the locals, for this attempt to communicate that cultural dialogue with them. What's the difference with kids?
I understand, you correctly. Schools is different. There's a public school system, and it was organized at the provincial level. They have an board of education, the primary education, and obviously we had a clearance from the board, and now officially the schools are coming with teachers. The teachers are sort of allowed to present them with a systematic knowledge about the world, and archaeology is a very much part of the curriculum. Okay, so this is not a bottom up. This is organized, and it is like designed that our Turkish colleagues who actually run the project know who is going to come next. Okay, there's like a system that, okay, now is this part of the province, now that part of the province comes, and we have some money for that. So to bring them in, it's not a lot of money. You just have a bus of just go in and take them back, and we just offer them lunch and drinks, etc. So it's not a big deal. But I think the teachers are very much in favor of this. Okay, but to be honest, I don't know what the Kuchukoi community would say about that. Whether this is bad or good, we haven't asked them about it. I don't know how to answer your question, but this is sort of organized differently. So if you want to have the even if you want to talk to the locals, you have to have a approval of the government, but having kids involved, even more sensitive. So that was organized at a very top level, and we stopped this year because the colleague of ours from Istanbul has changed the job, and I think he doesn't want to continue. But again, we just submitted an application to continue this program with children, but is it going to be accepted? We don't know. I think I can tell you in April when they say yes or no. Felipe wanted to say.
Yeah. Coming back to the question by Antonella, I think that there could be some sort of model here. Well, first of all, thanks a lot, Arek, for so citing contribution. Taking together it with the other contributions that we have seen this morning, we must realize that World Heritage List and almost every archaeological site really has got a problem, because this lack of engagement with local communities, with local population, we must do something about this. And here, perhaps, some of the things that we can do are coming to us. The basic thing is that we must try to enhance the cultural value of the sites. And for doing this, I would say that there is a couple of very good suggestions coming out from your presentation. The first one is that there is a real problem because usually communities not really interested on the intellectual side of archaeology. So we must look for some other excuses, for some other ways to try to substitute this lack of interest in intellectual archaeology. Here I would remember that perhaps the way for doing this is that people is much more interested in the process of archaeology, how archaeology does, how archaeology goes, than in the actual result. This is the first thing. The second thing is that something that also comes very clearly from your presentation is that this sort of process needs to put into it some sort of ethnography of the project itself. This is something that it has been already developed in Çatalhöyük because the facility mode of production that you are following. But I think that all our archaeological projects, mostly the big ones, need to put into it ethnographers. I think that this has to do with the promotion, with what Sonja said a while ago about how much we need anthropology into our projects. And I think this is something to do, just to end, because we also need that, because since the reactivity effect that any sort of social science approach provokes, any ethnographer of the project will cause much more reflexivity in all the others, including the local communities.
Yeah, I think I like absolutely that you have to also the vocabulary and the category that we use. And you ask about the translation, this whether we're actually translating this in a way that is understandable and comprehensive, our intellectual kind of issues, that's another matter. Maybe the lack of communication is the result of that, because we're trying to use different, not necessarily the most suitable terms or anything like that.
Thank you very much.